All right. All right, we are now recording. So as I was saying, if you are joining us through Zoom, feel free to enter any questions into the chat. All right, so we're actually going to start off. I'm going to start off by introducing the panelists joining us via Zoom. So welcome, Dr. Adrian Vasquez. He is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Detroit Mercy and also part of the Rebuild Detroit program. His research is an integrative and collaborative effort spanning many fields and contributes to the Rebuild Detroit program. One of his goals is recruiting and supporting students in STEM fields who would otherwise not be represented. And his goal is to be a facilitator, guide, and source of encouragement for future scientists rather than a stumbling block. Joining us in person is Dr. Victor Carmona Galindo. He is an associate professor in the biology department at the University of Detroit Mercy and director of sustainability for College of Engineering and Science, and additionally serves as a research associate with the Center for EcoHealth Research at the University of El Salvador. Dr. Carmona's research focuses on the ecology and evolutionary biology of interspecific interactions. And as Director of Sustainability, Dr. Carmona is principally responsible for coordinating integrative research collaborations between the science and engineering departments. And finally, joining us today will be our moderator, Dolores Perez. She is the president of the U of M MANRRS chapter. She is currently pursuing her master's in science and master's in urban regional planning, and she will be helping facilitate the conversation today. So again, if you guys want to stop, she will be keeping an eye out for any hands that are raised throughout the conversation. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started and maybe have both of the speakers start off with like their own introductions in case I miss anything that's like critically important to who you are and your identity.
Yes, so thank you so much, Julie, for the introduction, but could Victor and then Adrian right after just do a quick introduction of yourself and some of the research that you work on and anything important you would like to share as an introduction to yourself.
Great, you want to go first? Is that fine?
Yeah.
Adrian, you want to go first?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, great. Yeah. So right now I'm currently at Wayne State University. So the description that you gave earlier was what I was just doing a few years ago, but now I'm at Wayne State University and I'm actually working on a project detecting COVID-19 virus in wastewater to help with managing the pandemic. So that's my update, and it's really nice for you to invite me, and I'm happy to participate.
So mine was spot on. Thank you for that. I would add only that because of my background, so my mom is from Mexico, from the north, Chihuahua. So if you're familiar with Chihuahua, that's why I'm very tall. We're all very tall. And my father is from Costa Rica in Central America, and my wife is from El Salvador. So World Cups are terrible. I get in trouble no matter who I root for. I was actually born in California. And so in my research, I have projects in Mexico, I have projects in Costa Rica, I have projects in El Salvador, because that's where my network is. And I just basically build around that. And of course, I have projects here in Detroit. I work mostly with plant and insect interactions. Sometimes I dabble with animal interactions. So that's where I got kind of my start. Really, what attracted me to the whole region was tropical biology, and I just kept meeting people. And this concept of sustainability spins off with something I was filming with in California, and I got an opportunity to come here to explore further, which is collaboration. In science, we're terrible collaborators. We do really well in the lab, and maybe we'll talk to our neighboring lab, but we don't really do well bringing in other disciplines. And so when I was asked to do the directorship, I saw it as a really unique opportunity for growth.
Thank you both for sharing. So I think the first question that we have is to get the discussion going. And as the audience virtually or in person has any questions, feel free just to interrupt directly. This is just a direct conversation. So please interrupt as you guys would like with questions that you may have. So the first one that we have, and what got you interested in the environmental science field, and why did you decide to pursue a eventual career in that field? Whoever wants to go first with that question.
Adrian, since you're online, do you want to go first?
Sure. I was just trying to eat my concha, but
All right.
no, I'm kidding. But that's the one thing that I missed was the conchas. I was hoping that a drone would drop them off at my house or something. But yeah, conchas is one of our favorite treats here in the Vasquez household. So next time, I hope I can be there and get a lot of conchas and some hot chocolate from Oaxaca. I'm hoping that. So the question with being passionate about environmental science really began when I was when I was growing up in Central America. I grew up in Belize, and so my whole backyard was kind of just forest, and all my relatives were in some way connected to the earth, whether it was farming or fishing or, well, mostly my grandparents. And so just growing up in that environment was really the sort of what would you call it, the garden to develop my love for nature, and pretty much still is. So I know Victor personally. We worked together on several projects, and we went to he invited me to El Salvador, and so really working in that sort of habitat has really been a continued interest of mine, and I hope that I could continue doing it. And so the topics of this discussion attracted me because it kind of touched on some of those foundational things that I love doing from early on, from when I was a kid. So that's where that started.
Similar story from me as well. When I was little, we traveled a lot. So I was born in California, but I lived in Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, Connecticut, Spain, Brazil, and then came to the States to go to school. Ended up staying in the States. That was not my plan. And all my family abroad, especially in Latin America, and they are all tied to the land, just as Adrian points out. And there's one moment, I think, where it kind of put things in perspective for me. I remember my father thought it was good character building to go work at my grandfather's coffee farm, to go work at my uncle's, cattle farm. So he would send us. He's like, okay, it's time to go. And my son, it was like 4 a.m, you're just driving to get to the farm, and then it's an hour away, you get there on this rickety road, and then you're hauling sacks of feed. It was just, and so that was his version of giving us a chance to kind of grow up. And I remember there was this one time we were planting corn, and by hand, you're kind of going and making these rows. And I remember my uncle says, put 3 corn seeds and then, move 75 centimeters to the next hole. And I thought, well, what you mean 1 seed? Why are we putting 3 seeds? And he said, well, because out of those 3, maybe only 2 are going to grow. And from those 2, you're going to come in a month and you're going to cut the one that's smallest, and you're going to give a chance for the one, big one to grow. And that struck me as the most crazy thing, but that made the most sense, because I was trying to figure out, like, where am I going to go with this? I was studying chemistry, and as an undergrad, where am I going to go with this? And I realized that just like in farming, you have to kind of grow these experiences. So it's not enough just to have them. You're putting in a lot of work to see which idea is going to take off. One may go nowhere, one may grow, but just a little bit, and the other one's going to take off. And you don't know which one, but you got to invest yourself into these. So I think it was at that moment that I realized that it was okay for me to kind of follow my own ideas. Does that make sense? Because, up until that moment, it's like, My dad was a chemist, so studying chemistry made sense. I was about to, should I go to grad school? Should I go get a job? I was beginning to think ideas of my own, but it was like, how do I do that? When I saw my uncle tell me, put those 3 C's, I realized it's okay. I can actually try my own ideas. And it's also okay if I mess up because I know that one of those ideas is going to work. I just have to be a little bit, think more like a farmer. So but I think that's always stuck with me.
Thank you so much, both of you guys, for sharing that. I think this next question kind of relates to more of us as a student body, but thinking back years ago when you guys were students, what did you do to get involved within this field, and what do you think we as students can do to continuously become more involved within the environmental sciences or related sciences field?
Adrian?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because I think of my own trajectory. Certainly wasn't big. How you would logically think I would end up working in these environmental areas, because it really was it really was pursuing areas that weren't available to me in Belize. We have a lot of forest and marine and ecological opportunities, but we really didn't have much of the molecular tools. So in my case, when I had the opportunity to go for higher education, actually pursued areas that I didn't really know much about, like molecular biology. And today, now I use those tools and apply it to environmental topics. And so it's kind of a weird journey. I think as a student, I advise my students and students that I interact with to certainly be in the areas that they love, because you can't study things that you don't really love, and then be flexible so that you don't know how things might seem, disconnected, but then they can come and function. So right now, I just mentioned a while ago that I'm working on COVID, and many years ago, probably 10 years, more than 10 years ago, I took a virology class, and I never knew one day would be useful. And actually, right after that, I went to work at U of M, and so at that time, I didn't see any people of Latino descent there, but maybe one person I was just remembering, someone from Nicaragua. So to make a long story short, one, it's great to see that there are other Latin American descended people at U of M. And second, as a student, you have to tie it into things you love, you have to be able to connect it, like Victor was saying. You think of agriculture, well, he remembers when he was in the farm and planting corn. If I think of the molecular genetics of fish, I might remember, I love fishing. I grew up fishing for these kinds of fish, and that kind of gives an added interest to pursue that line of study. So that's how I worked my way in the maze through school, is that I try to find something that was personal to me in each class that I took, so that gave me the added encouragement. And I would also seek out help a lot. I mean, that's a whole other discussion, all the things I had to do to actually advance.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything that you've been saying. I would add also that environmental fields are richly diverse, just incredibly varied and nuanced. So there's really no wrong way to do environmental work of any kind. There's so many things that need to be addressed and understood and characterized. You really want that passion to kind of drive your interpretation, because you have to remember, we both have the advantage that we started this research line. You are about to start under the tutelage of a lab, but the idea is that you branch out into your own, you bring in your own experiences to shape that. So you want to be able to tap into that emotional resource of, I love this, I'm gonna, it's 3 in the morning and you want to add one more slide even though the talk is at 9 in the morning. That's where you want to be. You want to be happy that you're adding that extra slide. That's the place that you want to be looking for. That being said, I would say what really helped me was research. Now, I came on board when this idea of undergraduate research was an experiment. And I have to tell you, it was not popular. It was not popular. The folks that were doing research were all graduate schools. And they thought that having undergrads in your lab were just glorified dishwashers. They did not think that there was anything grandiose about you being in a laboratory. They thought you were going to get in your way. And I remember that my first job was at a research station, and this was a conversation that just kept coming back. Like, wait, there's going to be an undergrad researcher here? No, this is a problem. And then they would call a meeting just because there was undergrads coming in to do research. Like, what are we going to do? Should we send them to a different part of the forest? And there was a conversation about, like, they're going to get in our way. What if they go into our plots? It was just like insane. Now it just seems insane, but there was genuine concern that this was just something that was going to fizzle out because clearly there was nothing that undergrads could contribute and go on. And that's usually the way that this works. You have the kind of the gatekeepers, and they're always going to have like this vision of how things were. don't accept that, right? So the idea here is when you jump into research, you're jumping into a space that has been carved out for all of us. Now that I'm a university professor, I have undergraduate researchers and I publish with them. And I don't think that it's a waste of time, neither does my university. And so the idea here is, I didn't make that happen. That's been progressive. So I'm actually taking advantage of it, if you will. I'm actually working with a renewable resource. Students come all the time to my lab, right? So that idea of jumping into a research lab plays off of what Adrian was saying, which is you're going to see what you don't like and you're going to see what you like. And both things are equally important because you may want to do X, Y, Z. You jump in there and you go, oh, I didn't know it included all these other things. Yeah, that's not me. And then you'll stumble onto something else in the most random place and you'll say, that's what I want. And for me, as an undergrad studying chemistry, that's what I did. I did research in a lab. It was inorganic chemistry. It was crazy, metal ligands, and I was like, wow, this is insane. There's no structure. You can just go after the unknown. I really enjoyed that, but I knew it wasn't going to be that area. I just knew that I liked this realm of research, and that really kicked it off for me. So my advice to you guys is jump in the lab, any lab, see what they're doing, get some experiences, see what you like, see what you don't like, and just keep going down the path of, I like this, do it more. I like this, I'll do some more. And the next thing you know, you're starting to understand a little bit of what motivates you at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. I think kind of like a good segue into that. Have either of you guys ever dealt with imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you handle that?
I didn't hear quite well what you said.
So have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome? And if you have, how did you
So let us
go about
maybe
handling that?
speak
Oh,
like
I forgot.
It's right here. Yeah.
So the question was just if you ever dealt with imposter syndrome and then how you went about like handling that. I know a lot of us within these fields, especially like being minorities and STEM, we tend to deal with a lot of imposter syndrome. So it'd be nice to hear if you've ever had similar experiences and if so, like what are the best ways to navigate getting out of yourself that you aren't an imposter in this field.
Oh, like imposter syndrome, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess I don't know what exactly what you mean by imposter, but maybe you could use some other words to explain what um what it is you're asking.
Like you feel like a fake, like you feel like you don't belong in your field, I guess, that you're not good enough to be there sometimes.
Yeah, I think eh, you mean like maybe because you don't see anyone else that looks like you in that area or just in general yeah, so that's what you mean, like you really feel out of place. Yeah, I think that makes sense, and that's a huge problem, right? That's a massive problem that it seems that is not going away, and everybody that is trying to throw different things at it, whether it's new thinking or money or whatever, does not seem to correct the situation. And how do you deal with that? I mean, it's I guess you have to have support from your loved ones. I guess the people around you, that's important to deal with it. But it certainly is there. The stigma and the stereotypes and the obstacles and all that for people of minority descent, at least in the U.S. It's a big issue. I mean, remember that in my case, I went from being a majority to being a minority just by walking across international border. So it's all in your mind, right? When you keep using these terms, but once you move from one nation in which you are the majority, and then you move into another nation in which suddenly one overnight you become the minority, then it sort of starts to irk and irritate you, right? So you have to deal with those things. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't take the time to learn about other things besides themselves, so they never know anything beyond the beyond what where they spend time in. So I can give a few examples of situations that currently happen. One of them was we were planning a meeting, and I had suggested people from Belize, and the first thing some people asked me was, well, and they speak English well. So the issue with that is, one, it looks like people don't take time to learn geography and just expand their minds and horizons. So if they would have done that, they would know that Belize is an English-speaking country. And secondly, you just don't. If when you guys invited me to speak tonight, you didn't ask me if I can speak English, right? Or when you invited Victor, you didn't double check if he knows how to speak English. So those kinds of things are what would want to make you feel like, what the heck am I doing here? So you have to try to rise above that. You will always have those things, and get the support, and really build on on top of your experiences. I think that was helpful to me as well, so that eventually you know what they're talking about, and no longer do you feel lost, and you can cut right through the verbiage and all the nonsense, and to see that, look, this field, humans are doing this field. It's not super people, it's not like aliens. It's people like you and I, you know. Sometimes we sometimes we create this false illusion that certain areas of operation are reserved for some superhumans. I mean, it's just like a government, you know, we speak about the government, but those are just people just like you and I running the government that get tired, get sick, die. You know, they're not at all different from you and I. So we shouldn't feel intimidated by by that sort of thing, you know. So those are my 2 cents, I guess.
So in my experience, I feel that my imposter syndrome is a little bit different. So when I was growing up, we moved around a lot. And about every 3 years, we were in a new country. That's not just a new place, it's totally new country, different language, you know. And, you know, even within the Caribbean, it's totally different than the mainland. So in Europe, you know, it's just totally different times to do things, ways to do things. So my brother and I, my sister is 10 years younger than I am, so she came later. But when my brother and I were doing all this stuff early on, it was almost like a game, right? It was like, how quickly could you like fit in as a local, right? Like do the things that were done locally. And then I would always compare it, my wife doesn't like this story, to a chameleon. So when you think about a chameleon, it's trying to blend in. It blends in really well. In fact, that's why we celebrate it. It's like, oh, look, it blends in. So that's kind of the game. How quickly could you blend in? But you do this a couple of times and you start realizing that, yeah, you're blending in, but you're a chameleon trying to look like a tree. You're not a tree. You're a chameleon trying to look like a tree. And then it starts kind of, wait a minute, I'm not really going to be a tree, am I? You know, like this is not going to happen. No matter how hard that chameleon tries, it's not going to be that rock. And for me, that's my imposter syndrome. It's me trying to be like the things that was the game that we played, right? So with that concept of, for me, it's been really interesting because I don't, in Latin America, you kind of trust who are your mentors, your uncles, your neighbors, these long line family folks that are around you. In my family, there was folks that my grandparents were raising that weren't blood related, but they're kind of like your uncles. So I had a lot of those on both sides. People that just grew up with us, you know, they were, hi uncle. And those were your mentors. So whenever they called you to do something, you're like, really, I can do that? Great, let's do it. Even though you had no idea what you were doing, you had trust that they had the knowledge that you were ready for this thing. And so when I got thrown into professional circles, I noticed that there was no one calling me, you know, like, hey, you know, where are these mentors that have been in my personal life? I don't see them in my professional life. And that's the tricky part is now you're jumping into something and you're not really being called like, hey, it's your turn to do this thing. And you're like, shouldn't we be trying something new here? You know, you feel like no one's really giving you that chance. So this blends back to that in my version of the imposter syndrome, which is, I feel like early on in my life, I was trying so hard not to stand out that I'm realizing that I'm noticing things that the other trees and rocks aren't noticing because that's their nature. And I'm trying to bring them to the table and saying, we really need to work on this. But I know there's a question later on about what do you do at that stage? So I'll wait for that. But I will point out that a lot of this version that we have of ourselves, are we in the right spot? It's just a custom that we're picking up in our personal lives that kind of creeps into our professional lives. And I would point out that for me, the way that I deal with that imposter syndrome, and my sister now is a university professor, she's an assistant professor at University of Washington. She has a different version of that, you know, her imposter syndrome, and we chat about this. And I feel like that's really what Adrian also mentions is that network where you can kind of check in and say, hey, I'm working on this, you know, it seems a little crazy. And then your friends will tell you, no, it's not crazy, that's exactly what you need to be doing. And you're like, okay. So you kind of have to look for those folks, those uncles, you know, those folks that just kind of moved in and made home and trust that what you're doing is right. It takes time. You're always going to feel it, that that's not going to go away. And the idea is you kind of check yourself with the folks around you. You know, you trust that network that you've been building.
Thanks, both of you guys, for sharing, and I guess it kind of moves into the next question, you know, from dealing with imposter syndrome, is if you ever were deterred from working or studying the environmental field, and if so, why, and then what pushed you, to continue to study this field, and kind of what motivates you to keep going, keep pursuing knowledge within this field as well. And also, do you want to say, for any questions that do pop up, like, please feel free to interrupt too. I'm like, even though I'm asking questions, you guys also are able to ask questions too, especially like for those that are using as well. Because they're included.
Repeat it closer to this, because the audio, the transcript didn't pick up quite well. So if you could repeat the question. just one
Oh,
more time.
yeah, I can probably speak louder too a little bit. But kind of picking back off of imposter syndrome, were you ever deterred from working, or even pursuing an education within the environmental field? And if so, why was that? And then what did you do to kind of get away from that and stay within the field? And then what motivates you to keep going, to keep pursuing, you know, a career path into studying environmental sciences?
Yeah, so earlier on, I was alluding to all the things that had to occur for me personally to continue higher education. And yes, it definitely was extremely difficult, and probably sometimes I definitely wanted to quit, and probably would have quit if if I didn't have the support around me, because it was just extremely difficult. And many parts of it was difficult. Just having to deal with failure, and having to deal with really difficult circumstances, and sometimes not being able to excel at some of the areas that was required. Like I remember for physics, that was a very tough class for me. I needed to ask someone to tutor me on Sundays, so I would go to his house, and he thankfully he took the time to help me with my homework and whatnot. And then I had difficulty with chemistry, and I had to go to supplemental chemistry at the university on Saturdays, and so to try to get ahead of the curve class, and also getting tutored by my cousin, getting tutored by math teachers, and having to sacrifice summers to do that, and then having to really experience massive failure, and then thinking, wow, can I continue? You know, do I have the stamina and strength to continue forward? And thinking, no way, you know, I can't do this, I'm done, you know, I need to do something else. And just having an opportunity pop up and still go ahead and take it. So that was another thing, you know, sometimes the opportunities come, and we don't take them because it's not a easy opportunity, it's a hard opportunity. So that was my case. And really, if I give you an international perspective, it's extremely difficult for some people in certain countries to be able to pursue higher education. For example, where I'm from, Belize, does not have any PhD programs, not even master's programs in some of these areas. So you would definitely have to leave the country and do those studies in Mexico or in the Caribbean. And in the US is extremely expensive, as you all know. And the price of education is just skyrocketing every single year. every single year tuition is going up, and it's not keeping up with salaries and not keeping up with anything. So all those things are tough, and only a few might be able to get a scholarship, an assistantship, some fellowship. And so a lot of people, I've visited Honduras and Mexico and places, I've seen a lot of young people that certainly have the passion and the capacity to pursue these fields, but the chance of them doing it is slim because it's so expensive and so hard to navigate all the visa systems and get a student visa and find a place to live and all that stuff. So those are some of the huge obstacles that I see, and I experience some of them myself. So I think our community might be able to help one another to deal with some of those things.
For me, gosh, I was never directly, and I think you guys probably share this experience, you're never directly told, don't be an environmental science or in the sciences that have to do with the environment. For me, it's more like you're made to feel that what you're doing is not important. It's a heavier burden, to be told, don't do that, you're like, wait, then, the rambunctious part of you like, yeah, of course I'm gonna do it. That's one reaction, but that's not really been my experience. I haven't been told, don't waste your time with it. Although I know that students have told me that they've been told as much, like, hey, that's not as hard as something like another science. I hear them say those things, but in my experience, that's never happened. But I can say that there's two versions of this, as Adrian points out. There's an abroad version, it's really interesting. But then there's a US version that I think is very dangerous. So I'll start with the US because I think that the majority of us are probably more familiar with that experience. Here I feel like you need to bust your bubble, if that makes any sense. We're in a bubble, whether you like it or not. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the allegory of the cave. That's like the frame of life. That's kind of like the bubble. We are in this bubble, and I see this because I travel a lot internationally for my project with students, and of course I have underrepresented students in my lab. They travel with me abroad, and the experience they get abroad as scientists is a marked experience, and they always comment. So on my last trip to El Salvador, I had a small group of students, and when we arrive, we get taken on this Suburban, and we meet the vice ministry, the minister, the vice minister, deputy secretary of some state department. In this case, it was natural resources. So imagine the EPA as a state department. And we're there, and we're in a room with all these monitors everywhere. And the students are like, what is going on? Like, what are we doing here? And it's like, okay, this is the Ministry of the Environment. And they're just blown away that we just got off the plane and we're taken to this thing. And they're like, why are we here? I'm like, because one of the faculty that I brought happens to be a Nobel laureate. And they're really excited that we're here as a science team, and they want to show us how some of the issues that they're working on. And they're like, well, this never happens in the States. And then after we leave that, we go to the hotel, and the next morning, we're getting interviewed for a radio station. And then they're like, they're asking me, don't you mean just the faculty? No, they want to know the student version of this. Because this idea of undergraduate research doesn't exist in Latin America. Like undergraduate Latin Americans, they're not doing that research. They're doing a thesis, but it's more like a survey. They're not really doing that quantitative lab experience thing that we do here from freshman year. So when I meet with the students at the end of the day, it just gravitate to, how was today? How did you feel about today? They're like, I don't understand. I am a scientist in the US, and I never get interviewed. I never get invited to the department of whatever. I don't get invited to these things. But here we just arrived, and all we're doing is going to a conference, and we're getting Black Suburbans this way, trips over there, interviews over there. And they're just blown away. And I'm like, yeah, because in Latin America, as Adrian points out, science is a luxury. To have a science degree, it is a luxury. And to have a PhD or, it's just like, they want to talk to you. They want to hear how are we doing a good job in climate change adaptation? Is this what you think, And big concept, like I gave a climate change talk at an embassy and someone from a university came and said, up until now, I had no idea biologists had anything to do with climate change. And I was like, wait, what? Oh, it makes sense. That country has one biology department in 33 universities. That's it. So of course they don't get to see this. So it would be, a concept new for them. So I don't know what it is about US education. We're placed in this bubble where you have to do as you're told and to become a scientist rather than how you bust through and how you come up with new ideas. You're not celebrated for your ideas, you're celebrated for your obedience. I don't understand why that is. I don't understand it. When I bring folks abroad, they're like, you have a science degree against all odds? Please come and talk to us. And it's just like a big deal. And now abroad, there's a different flavor to this. And that is abroad, applied fields are highly respected. Oh my gosh, this works. But you guys are growing up in a generation, in a century that's very different from my generation century. And that is applied works until it's no longer working. COVID-19 is a great example. Not the only one, but I think it's the clearest one. We're thinking about zoonotic jump is viruses, which we weren't ready for cranking out vaccines any less or rolling out mRNA technology before it was ready. Everything was fast tracked. We weren't ready for that. And that didn't come from an applied area. It came from the neighboring region, which is called fundamental science, where you're asking questions for questions like, gee, how does this work? How does that work? Not because there's an application, but because you want to characterize this unknown system. Abroad, my field, which is theoretical biology, as in college and evolutionary biology, my uncles were like, oh, you're here to study butterflies again. As because they're my uncles, they get to make those jokes. And you're like, oh, yeah. But they are agronomers, they are veterinarians, very applied fields. And so for them, they don't understand the creation of knowledge and where it's coming from because they're so busy, as Adrian points out, solving the problems that they currently have, so they need to apply it. And so in any healthy society, you've got to have both. We have that in the States. We have fundamental field that feeds into an applied field that takes those applications and carries them on. In the developing world, that relationship is null. So when you travel abroad, you're a rock star. And to me, that's why I take students abroad, because especially if, as an underrepresented faculty, I want my underrepresented students to feel like rock stars, because I know that here, it's the opposite. They're made to feel like roadies. I told you to put that over there, and I only want the yellow skills, like that crazy sort of stuff. And I want them to see that that's not how the world operates, so they can break out of that bubble. So that would be my advice: break out of your bubble.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. I know we're starting to come short on time, but I think one of the last questions I want to ask, and then open it up to the floor afterwards, is just what advice would you give to another Latinx student or another underrepresented student that's within the field of ag, natural resources, or the related sciences, on anything that you just would want to provide any type of advice, whether that's life advice, school advice, anything that would be important for us to know as students, either young or old, learning about or finding our way into this field.
You were mentioning about advice to students that might be in the same category. Okay. All right. We need to take that Concha break soon, though. Yeah. No, it's a great conversation, and I think Definitely there's a lot of big issues, big problems, right? As we have, as we know, and sometimes I look at the numbers and I'm amazed. I mean, there's just a massive disparity in this country and probably the world of 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 where it's not properly represented, right? And I'm gonna narrow it down to Latin America, which has which when you have people in the U.S. of Latin American descent, which is a minority here, even though um, all the minorities make up what 40% of the population, so it's not really a minority in that respect, but it's certainly inside of the sciences, right? Where you only have 6% or 7% minorities make up the sciences, right? And uh, so seeing that's reality makes you realize, yes, it's an uphill struggle because you're like a rare creature, you know, and so you have a higher chance of becoming extinct, and so you really have to like Victor was saying, have a good team of people around you and relate to one another and try to help one another, which could be difficult as well, and and really be flexible in that some people won't understand, right, or won't know. Like I was telling you about many people that didn't know that this particular country was English speaking. That maybe those people there can actually understand grammar better than you, but due to your wrong definers, you think you knew everything. So you don't want to do that, and look at the success stories, right? I was just remembering. I know some minority people that from Michigan, particularly from your university there in Ann Arbor, that faced a lot of struggles, and but didn't let that keep them stagnant. And in fact, they eventually moved on to bigger and better things and got the recognition that they rightly deserve. So it's very tough, I would say, but it's certainly not impossible. And I always tell that to my students. I mean, heck, if I could have navigated my way through a difficult journey, and I was by no means an AAA, plus student, just genius student. No, 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 no. My head was hard to understand some of the concepts. I have to, as they say in Mexico, explain it with beans, explain it with rice, explain it with stones, explain it 50 different ways until I get it, and that was my case. So I think we have to nurture people that are coming up, just entering college, who maybe loved farming or something, and maybe nobody told them that could be useful for a career or for making a living off of it, but don't let that don't believe that, if you really love large carnivores or whatever, you just love going to the zoo and you want to do that, then that's probably what you should be doing. You can't do something that your nature was not meant to do. You have to follow that thing that comes natural to you. And if that is environmental studies and field work and being out in the field and being out outdoors and doing those things, and those things bring you happiness, and you want to learn more about critters and learn more about birds and learn more about plants and learn more about the water and those kinds of things, then you need to keep going at the thing you love the most. So that would be my advice.
My advice, very similar to the sentiment that Adrian's sharing. My advice is this: do not wait for Superman. And I say that knowing that there's a documentary called Waiting for Superman, which is exactly about not waiting for Superman, right? The second part of that advice is realize that you are Superman. And I can show you that right now. You are students in one of the most fantastic research universities in the country. That degree is going to open doors. You are Superman. Here's the important part. What are you going to do with it? So it's kind of like your origin story. You realize that you have superpowers. You have superpowers. You are at a fantastic institution. What are you doing with your superpowers? The resources to bear that this institution has are phenomenal. You are Superman. Don't wait for this mentor that's going to walk you through things. The biggest surprise for me has been this idea of STEM pipelines, which I think is crap, but this idea of STEM pipelines has been around for 30 plus years. So that means that I should have these mentors already there. I can tell you they're not. I am the only Latin American professor in the entire College of Engineering and Science. That's 65 professors in Detroit. The only underrepresented faculty member there, we just hired this year. She's African American. But other than that, 65 faculty, that's it. In Detroit. Explain that to me. I'm from Los Angeles, and my college back there also was 60, it was 67, 68. Also engineering and science. Guess how many Latin American faculty we had in Los Angeles? 5. When I left, it went to 4. In Los Angeles. Guess how many African American faculty we had? 1. She was hired the year I left. So there are these mentors that we are hoping you are those mentors. You know, you're looking up, look at yourselves. You are those mentors. You're going to be those folks that are going to be having these labs, that are going to be showing people that they're rock stars. Realize that you shouldn't wait for this moment to arrive. You're precipitating it. It's going to be you who does that, not someone that you're going to be hopefully around the corner you bump into. It's not going to happen. And so the quicker you realize that you are these super folks, these super people, these superpowers that you have, rather, the more experiences you can start. You know, it's kind of like watching the first Spider-Man. Oh, it's awkward. It's awkward, but you got to figure out how to do it. This is a great space to do that. You have amazing resources. You have amazing peers. And so tinker, dabble, try, write a paper, try this, try that, and experiment. And you're going to see that you're going to get better with your superpowers. And next thing you know, you're going to be an island. You know, you're going to be this hub, rather, where you start bringing in other folks who, you know, you're giving yourself permission to shine. Other folks are like, well, I want to hang out with that guy. Look at all the cool things they're doing. And that's been my experience that I would share to you. Is I don't think of myself as a mentor, because for me, a mentor is someone who has one job, and that's to become meaningless. At first you need me, and it's kind of like, man, you pop in there, you don't need them anymore. That's because you realize that you are ready for that. You know, you're ready to tackle that big, wide world. So that would be my recipe, because that's been my biggest surprise. Is I'm like, okay, the next stage, now that I'm an assistant professor, I'll have that mentor. Oh, no. Now that I'm an associate professor, I'll have that mentor. And it's like, oh man, I'm going to be a full professor soon. And where is this mentor? You know, like, oh, it's me. Okay, got it. And now you look back and you're like, you forget to look where you are. And that's the Well, that's the cool thing about being at a Jesuit university is the now is very important. You know, we're always looking ahead, but if you stop for a second and look where you're sitting and where we are, and the letters, that beautiful M, the golden M that you have, that's a big deal. Celebrate it. It was not easy getting here, but you're here. Now do something amazing that we know we all want you to do. That would be nice.
Thank you both so much. Any if I have any questions that they want to ask, I want to open the floor up to you all.
I guess for both of you, like, what is, first, this is like two-parted. What is your least favorite thing about what you guys do? And then what is your favorite thing?
Yeah, I guess even though we say that we are always enjoying what we're doing, it still is work. So sometimes the least favorite thing is that it's still work, right? So I've been having to be able to manage my work, which can become like just kind of like a overflowing work that spills into my, where when I'm home or with my family and that. So I need to I've been trying to learn how to put boundaries to what I do, and sort of saying no, I'm not gonna deal with that paper tonight. I'm not gonna be writing that manuscript. I need to do something else that might affect your health or your relationships at home. So it's just like any other work, right? It's gonna be a lot of work, and you need to know how to manage it. That's one of the things that I contribute.
I have an answer, but I don't think anyone's gonna like my answer. My least favorite thing, and by the way, if you asked me this question along my formation, you're like postdoc, I would have answered differently. So I'm answering as now as an associate professor. Racism. I hate it. And because I'm the only one, nobody understands it. Nobody. Absolutely. And so you not only experience it, but you live double consequences. You have to try, now you have to become like a soothsayer. My an upper administrator, so I don't use names, was like, maybe you should be on this committee. I'm like, you realize that I have a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology. I don't study this area. I'm just telling you that working in these conditions sucks. And that's what I'm trying to communicate, right? That, oh, maybe you should be in this committee. But I think you're misunderstanding my role in a learning environment, right? Like I have other expertise. I would like to use those. Thank you. It was pain in the butt getting a PhD. I would like to use it. So I feel like you have to experience it, and then you have to live double consequences because the folks that are creating the environment are like, oh, that's not really what we meant. I know, but that's what you did. That's different. And then it just eats up time, energy. It's very consuming. And I feel like lately it's becoming a more pronounced part of my day. It wasn't before. If you asked me when I was a postdoc, never would have even mentioned this. But when I was an assistant professor, it was creeping up. And the more I grow in this position, as I move forward, I see it now. And the worst part is because I'm also an academic advisor, my students tell me things that I just, it's just like, gosh, you have to go home at the end of the day. Like, this is insane. It's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And so I think that's the hardest part is seeing it, hearing it, living it, and not seeing any action around it because it's kind of like COVID. The universities realize that they have done zero to grow the talent that obviously is out there. It's obviously out there. I see them all the time, but they're not at institutions. They're not on tenure track positions, right? And they're always being called to do something that they're qualified because of the color of their skin, not because of the degree they have. It's like it's ridiculous entry. And so that means that you spend wasting your time on these, not wasting your time, meaning I'm not using my degree. Now I have a harder time finding a position that values my degree because I've been spending time on these other things that this industry clearly needs, but really not part of your plate. So that's been the really tough part. What makes it all work, you know, really, is I love what I do. I don't know how to explain this. I absolutely, my wife has to call me, look, it's 3, did you eat lunch? Oh crap, I forgot to eat lunch. Like, you know, she'll come downstairs, hey, because now we're in the basement. That's my COVID cave, you know. And I feel like caveman because it's all just hair everywhere. You know, like, oh, working, right? But I love it. Actually, hey, look, it's 1. You should go to, oh yeah, it's 1 o'clock. I had no idea. I just forget. I just get absorbed in what I'm doing. And you know, when students say, you didn't answer my email, they have no idea. You're just like, oh my gosh, oh my God, this is an amazing idea. And you're just like typing away instead of answering emails. You know, like, oh yeah, I forgot that. I love it. I love in El Salvador, which is a fascinating country, my wife's country, is the opposite of Costa Rica, my father's country. And I'm a dual citizen, so you know, it's just the opposite world. Costa Rica is 100% forest protected and 90-something% forest cover. El Salvador is 2% forest cover and completely agricultural. And of that agricultural area, only 1% is actually irrigated. So they live with the seasons, you know, they live with whatever nature brings, which is insane. But because it's very impoverished, being able to do work there is just absolutely fascinating because no one does work there. And so I realized that when I throw out a paper that says, oh, El Salvador, it just is like, what? The whole region is just understudied because it's so poor. I mean, everything you know about El Salvador is people leaving El Salvador. So it's insane. It's insane that with the degree that I have, I'm studying tropical vector disease from the insect that carries that disease. And we're studying basically these cryptic species that are in population. And because medical doctors are telling us things like, you don't need to study the bug, people get this disease. And you're like, yeah, but if you understand the bug, we'll understand the way that this is transmitted. Zero concept of bugs being a role. Our papers are showing that there may be these subspecies, and we're even mapping now using machine learning, which is fascinating. I'm now teaching a class called biostats, and I realized that it's an endangered course. Biostats is going to disappear. Not yet, you still have to do it, but it's going to disappear because basically machine learning, it's going to build its own algorithm. There's no need to do parametric. Why should the world be normal? You know, like, to me, it seems fascist now. But anyways, this idea that we're mapping now where these subspecies could be and strains of the parasite that they carry could be, we're coming out with these amazing applications. I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's what really keeps me going. I'm enthralled by the topic. It's a puzzle that I want to solve. It's a puzzle that I want to be working on. It's kind of like a video game when you're growing up. You're like, you don't want to let go. You're just addicted to it. I love it. I love it. So that's what keeps me going. It's just that I love the challenges.
I would say thank you for this. I have to go, but no, this is really great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for stopping by.
I do have a question on your perspective on racism and in regards to trying to fit inside a space that doesn't recognize your value. Have you found that it's easier it's worthwhile to convince the people who aren't recognizing you or ask for people who are also not being seen to follow? What is?
Yeah, I mean, it gets at the heart of the matter. So let me describe it this way. I'm going to try my best to describe it because I'm trying to figure out how to best describe this. The problem that I see, at least my characterization of this problem with the data that I have, N equals 1, like my experience. Imagine a table, you know, And at this table, all power, authority gets wielded. Everything gets made at this table. And as you can imagine, this table has a number of chairs. So everyone there is very knowledgeable, they've known this. Perhaps their father was at that table. You know, there's like a tradition of decisions that are being made. In order for a seat to become available at that table, someone has to step down. So if you're at that table, bringing someone new, you're filling in shoes. There's a role to be played. That's the expectation. You know, see yourself at that table. Someone's gonna come in. Wow, they have big shoes to fill. Oh no, you know, these are my expectations. We need to be doing it this way. And you know, in other words, don't fit out, fit in, right? But don't step out. You're not at the table. You're the person that's coming in. You busted your butt. You have to work. Maybe you're coming from a region where getting a degree means leaving that country. You can imagine all these different experiences to get to be considered now to be able to join that table. And that table could be whatever you want. It could be grad school, it could be undergrad, it could be that scholarship, it could be the job. For you, it's an opportunity that you've been working towards. You've been cultivating. You've been working that land to make sure that this thing gives fruit. This is it. When you get it, what are you going to do? You're going to knock it out of the park. You're going to want to bring in new ideas, new experiences, new perspectives. Your whole reason to be is to make the changes that have helped you along the way because you want to make more room, right? And that's the conflict. For me, that's the conflict. The folks at the table don't think like that. They've never had anyone like that before. Because they have always lived at that table. It's not even like a concept of, well, no, of course, this is the grandson of so-and-so. Of course they're gonna be doing this, right? So how do you have a conversation from these two perspectives? Do you see what I'm saying? To me, that's the problem. When I'm talking to someone, and remember, I'm at a principal undergraduate institution that happens to be, and I've never heard this term until I came to Michigan, a principally white institution. This term blows me away. This is like a thing, like it's a thing. Principally or primarily white institution. Translation, no minorities. So imagine having a conversation of, this is not fair. They'll say, dude, this is how it's always been. Because they're at that table. Of course, you're filling in a seat. But you're like, no, but I'm bringing in, you hired me because I'm bringing things to the table. Yes, but maybe not right away. Maybe you need to wait. You know, maybe you want to kind of fit in. My first semester at the University of Detroit Mercy, I was told that my main job was to fit in. And I was like, this is 2017, you can't talk like that. You know, like you can't say those things out loud. And these were like not, you know, these were not spring chickens. These are folks that are taking courses and, you know, promoting diversity and inclusion. And I'm like, this is not the verbiage you should be using. But that's what, and I remember sitting there like, holy, well, you know, yeah, this is insane. And it's slowly made sense to me that I am coming in thinking it's my turn. And they're seeing me as I'm filling in some spot that they envisioned for me. They didn't even bother to talk to me. I'm filling in for them. So how do we solve this? Because that's the second part of your question. And I've been thinking so hard about this. And the best parallel, I don't think it's an answer, but it's a parallel, is I think we've had a similar experience Thanksgiving. Remember you guys had to sit at the kiddie table? I don't know, you guys, you're laughing because you did, right? Remember the kiddie table? And you remember being the oldest at the kiddie table? And at some point, you know, eating extra pumpkin pie just gets too much. You know, you're peeking in to see what the grown-ups are talking about. Now, here's the crazy part. Do you remember when you went to the grown-up table and you were like, this is what they talk about. This is incredible. And then you remember speaking up at the grown-up table? I remember looking at my dad like, just look for an approving glance, approving, like, is this okay? You know, an approving glance. It was never contentious to move to the grown-up table. In fact, it was very welcoming. And it was almost nurturing, I would say, right? Because that's the quality. Why is that possible? Why does that happen? To me, it's what Adrian said at the end, community. If a university does not have a community, a sense of community, it seems like there's a disconnect. Now it's fit in and you should just fill this gap, or no, I'm bringing experiences. But if it becomes a familiar where people are comfortable with the fact that you have that weird uncle that, I don't know if you guys have that weird uncle that burns incense every time there's a solstice and goes to the pier. You guys don't have that uncle? I have several. So apparently the 60s were awesome. And I have several uncles that are still in the 60s. Yeah, they look like me now, but not because of COVID, just because that's their style. But I think that that's what's missing. I think we have done a poor job in academia to build community, and we're reaping the consequences. Because if we did have community, then someone coming up the ranks, it would be mentors, you know, associated and full professors like me eventually, giving, approving, yeah, go ahead, speak up. Making sure that you have that space to try it out. Say, you know, at first you're gonna say weird things, you know. I remember when George Bush was the worst president, you know, back then, and we were like, oh, you know, and looking to my dad to see what he would say, you know, because we're not really in those circles to see. He read more about those things and you know, to see if it was okay to make those comments. Now I feel like that's what's missing is this community element. So I don't know if that's the answer. I don't know if that's the answer, but I feel like that's what's missing.
People are always the greatest asset. Unfortunately, a universe like this where pretentiousness is celebrated almost, compete with one another. As minorities, that doesn't help us at all. Competition is really only valuable. There's a lack of resources. We have so much here, we cannot compete against each other.
So the way that I met Doris fits in this narrative. I got an email from higher up. And they said, oh, I just learned that they have a volunteer program, Room Director of Sustainability. And apparently sustainability means changing light bulbs, operational sustainability. I'm not in facilities management, I'm in the biology department with a PhD. Like that's not my vision for sustainability. So I get this email saying, I just met this wonderful person, which you know, spot on. And it's, they have a volunteer program, I'd like you to check it out. And I was like, volunteer, like again, like, I think we can do more with a STEM degree than volunteer with a community member. I was just like, this is, but then when I saw Southwest Detroit, and I had read enough about Michigan to know that Southwest Detroit has a large Latino community. So I was like, chances are that this person's Latin American and I'm Latino. So I showed up and I basically, when I met Dolores that moment, I told her, confess, I want nothing to do with volunteer programs. I'm here to see if I can bring the class and maybe we can do some research that helps what you're doing in this garden. She told me, I've been waiting 5 years for someone to tell me that. In other words, I disobeyed. I disobeyed. And the word that I hear at work is really interesting, is you're getting the reputation, the phrasing is this, they're very careful with the phrase, and this is word for word. You're getting the reputation that you are unreliable. And I'm thinking, man, I'm busting my butt off. Last night I was up until 2, the night before 1. Forget the weekend, I worked all weekend long. As this COVID hit, I haven't stopped working. It's just nonstop. My wife has to come and drag me out. We're going on bikes or bicycles, you know. We go. So I'm thinking, I thought it was like, okay, am I not meaning that? Then I realized what they mean by unreliable. I was externalizing it. When I internalize it, it means I'm not doing what they tell me to do. That's what unreliable means. It means you're not doing what they want. And I was like, I can live with that. I can live with that. But it took me a year of a lot of I needed time to process it. It hurts. It hurts because at first, if you take it for word, what it means, which is you're not meeting deadlines or something along those ways, right? But then now I understand what it means. It took me a second to process and say, oh, because I'm breaking out. Now, guess what? I have faculty that come with me to meet the lawyers so that they can bring in different tools to emulate that horrible thing that I was doing before. Now seems fantastic. It's kind of grown on that. So that's the second part that I'm now having to process, which is it sucked. Now it no longer sucks, but I still feel the ouch of the earlier comment, and I still have to work with these folks. So how do you, and now you have to turn the other cheek, you have to like be the grown up. It's hard. That's hard. Like I said, you just double the consequences. You live the moment and then you have to, swallow it, that ego, you have to swallow it. It's really tough because, I'm human. Of course I want to send them to insert your favorite adjective. Of course, but I can't, I have to work there. I like eating, I like taking rents, well, that's not true, I'm tenured, but that's what I mean is, it's tough. So I don't know if I have, the right answer, but I do know that I'm realizing that the only way to innovate is to break rules. And I feel like we have inherited this environment, all these environmental issues, you name it, PFAS, climate change, all these problems. It's from following the rules, from people saying, yeah, I'm a robot, I'm just going to be doing this thing even though I know it's causing harm. I get paid to do this, You're in STEM, you're in a STEM field. We are not robots. And I don't know how else to ride a bicycle than falling off. You have to innovate to learn how to do that. That's the nature of this of STEM fields. So to be told that you have to follow some protocol, that's not science. That's not what science is. Science is breaking protocols. Everything that I know about science is someone decided to not, no one went to the moon before we got there, not because of great past experience, but because they broke rules. They made new rules. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to make new rules. And I think we is this room, because there are folks that are in charge right now that are using the old rules. And when they say things like, you're unreliable, they're using the old manual, not the new manual. And you need to recognize that they are out of touch with what unreliable means. And you have to see past the incident. It's not easy. The way that I do this with folks like Adrian. Adrian and I got caught on, not to get into details, this horrible situation. Horrible. It was just caustic, letters were sent, people got upset. And right now, they're using the experiment that got us in trouble. Right now, this semester, they're using it because they now love it. But, when we did it, it was like, this is a disaster, you need to do this, and emails were sent and horrible things were said. And I got letters from provosts, terrible. And I was like, only here for my first year. And I was like, what am I getting myself into? Like going back to California, man, like what's going on? And now everyone loves it. That's an awesome idea. Which is great. If you think about it, it is great. That's the whole purpose. It took them 4 years to get to where I was 4 years ago. That's tough because there's a lot of traction lost. And that's the hard part. But here's, I think, a broader solution for everyone. That institution, in my case, is not my career. My career is my work. I work at that institution. They hire me because I'm supposed to expand the caliber of the institution. That's what I hope I'm bringing, right? That's the way I see it. So I'm beginning now to see these two as separate entities. My career is something that I have to guard. It's not being guarded for me. There's not a mentor telling me, be careful with this, be careful with that. I have to guard it. And when people say things like unreliable, it's because you're saying what Adrian said, which is you have to start saying no. But they don't like no. For them, no means you're not answering no. Because the only answer is yes, no. And that's the part you have to be careful with. Is you have to take charge of your career and make the career decisions that you feel are the ones that you need to make, even though the institution may have pressures that are different. That's why I'm not in the way, because I felt like the institution was going in a different direction. I was taking students abroad, and I was getting higher ups telling me, we're Los Angeles. We don't go to the world comes to us. And I'm from East LA. Are you kidding me? No way. My family goes to the world all the time. You know, they travel every Christmas, you know. So I think it's that Superman answer again. You start to see yourself in the driver's seat, not in the passenger seat. It's not easy because when you're the driver, you have to make decisions and you have to live with the consequences. Sometimes those consequences are not a lot of fun. They can be a little bit hurtful. But if it means that 4 years later you're celebrated, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It just takes time. And I don't know how else to say it to you guys. There isn't a first front. We are the first front. It's like storming the beach. My friend in LA used to say, we're storming the beach. You have to kind of take a beachfront and then grow it. It's not easy. It's gonna take work. But the key here is you guys are gonna be doing that work. So don't expect that it's gonna be done for you. You're part of that work that needs to be done, as am I. And there's a lot of work to do.
Thank you so much for sharing. Is there any, I guess, last minute thoughts, questions, or anything that you wanted to add, Adrian, before we kind of conclude the event that we have, and then we can all, ask questions offline.
I didn't quite hear what you said, Dolores, but maybe you could repeat it.
Sorry with the owl. No, is there any last minute thing, anything that you would want to add in before we conclude?
Oh, yeah, sure. I think, like what Victor was saying is definitely good encouragement. It's I was just thinking about this statistic that I learned the other day reading a National Geographic article. It says that in the US, only 40% of African Americans own their own house compared to 70% of white Americans. So I was thinking, man, that's a terrible inequality right there, because how are you gonna study, when you don't own your own house, you're a student, you're trying to find a next apartment, you're hustling, your family is trying to find a quiet place, and so that's just like one of the thousands of obstacles you probably face in this country. But like Victor said, you're in an institution, make it work for you. Use all those resources. I'm assuming I'm speaking to mostly or all U of M students and of different kinds in this audience. And so you have to leverage all those things that you can, and look out for people that you can speak to, like Victor or like myself. I mean, I'm sure Dolores and her team will have a place you can reach out to us if there's something else, by email or something. But I feel the challenge, but I think you have to try it. If you really like, and we're talking about the environmental field here, right? But you can be any field. And I would just really encourage the students that are in this audience and future audiences to use the resources that are available to you, and find some people you can talk to that will give you some insider help. I've had many conversations with Victor, and we've talked about many topics, and we're always running out of time, and we're always And before I forget, if you could bring some of those conchas for me, Victor, I'd appreciate that. And yeah, so I would encourage all of you students and people there to, if you like environmental science and those things, I know that U of M has a great natural history museum. I've been meaning to go there and get some specimens from Belize that I know they have that are like over 100 years old. And to if any of you are connected in other ways to your roots, if it's from some other country, like Victor has talked about his Costa Rican and Mexican roots and his family's roots in El Salvador, and kind of use that like momentum to push you forward and make your mark. I mean, many times I have I've had to have conversations with myself about research and discoveries being made in Belize. And I'm thinking, well, why isn't any Belizean making that discovery? It's all these foreigners saying, oh, we just discovered this bird. And then you're like, but my grandfather knew that bird from before you were born. I mean, you didn't just discover that bird. I mean, we have a name for it already. So, these kinds of things are important. And as my parting words, your description that you had for this event tonight had a lot of cool topics that probably would be interesting to continue discussing in the future, like agriculture and like fields, environmental science, and connecting that to a lot of the history of Latino people, for example, a lot of the history, the roots of when people move to LA and when people move from other countries, and how you may have transitioned. Like I said, like my grandfather was a campesino, he worked in the fields. And my grandmother, she grew up on an island fishing. And so how does that help? How does that help you thinking about that and now applying it? I'm not saying you're gonna be a fisherman or a farmer, but maybe now you're gonna use molecular biology, in my case, and improve agriculture or help with conservation genetics of fish or some other thing, and so it connects, it's still you're still valid to do that. You are valid to do that. You have history going forward. So hopefully one day we will no longer have this imposter syndrome, right? Because we say, look, my forefathers plowed this land. Do I ever right to be a plant molecular biologist today? And I have a history working this area. So that's it. Thank you all of the Dolores and her team to invite, and it was great being a part of this tonight.
All right, so yeah, thank you guys all for coming out. One more round of applause for our speakers for tonight. If you guys want to stick around, I know there might be a couple of people who have pre-orders to pick up, and if you have any other questions, or maybe I should stop the recording. Yeah, let me